Welcome back to That Rugby podcast, hosted by the Sports Booth. My name is Luke. My co-host is Hughesy, our Wallaby supporter, who's had his team selected, which we're going to deep dive into. But we obviously had a very special video come out very recently, Hughesy, on our YouTube channel, which more people need to see, I think.
It was a very, very special video. I've started doing some spruiking. I've done a little bit of spruiking for it, obviously, but I think the best what we could take away from this video, there's a few things we could take away from this video. The first is that the parallels between rugby and baking are multilateral. All right, there was so many great comparisons to be made. You know, preparation being key, having the right tools for the job, doing a bit of research beforehand. Even yourself, I have to say I was very impressed that you thought ahead enough to make 2 pavlovas. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough to make up for how terrible they both were, but it showed some ingenuity on your behalf. I have to admit, I was very nervous going into this because I'd never baked pavlova before. But then I saw your video. And I was just like, what was I ever scared about? I mean, like, the final shot of your pavlova, I honestly, if you just shown me that picture, I wouldn't have known it was pavlova. I would have thought it was tzatziki, with the kiwi fruit looking like chopped up cucumber. It was, I honestly felt so bad for Gemma having to try that. And you could see she was really struggling to find something positive to say. I just, if I'd known that she was going to have to experience that, I probably would have vetoed this challenge just to spare her, because no one deserves that. But it was, it was good fun. There's some good content there, some good banter between the both of us. Even though we were recording separately, I think we both took a bit of a trash talking route, which is good. So it's on the Sports Booth YouTube channel and on our Instagram page. There's some clips as well, so go ahead and check that out if you haven't already. And the overall context of it is that this is part of our Sports Booth Bledisloe Competition, where we're going to be doing some challenges and doing our own version of the Bledisloe, because obviously I'm Australian, Luke's Kiwi, and that sort of thing's fun to do. I do want to point out that, and I want to make it very clear here, that the pavlova is an Australian dish, and this challenge conclusively proved it. And as I said in the video as well, the recipe that you chose for us both to follow was in the subcategory of Australian foods. So
I'm going to blame that on Google, because I'm obviously Googling from Australia, so it just thinks I'm an Australian. So I'm blaming that on Google. I'm also blaming my performance on, as you said, not being prepared and having the right tools. It was kind of like if New Zealand selected their Z team to perform for the All Blacks against the Wallabies. That's what it felt like now looking back at the video and watching your lovely pav versus mine. But yes, you do take a convincing 1-0 lead. Like, if I was to say how big the lead would have been or what the scoreline was, I would have said it was about a 70 to 80-0 performance for the Wallabies against the Kiwis. So a classic big victory.
That's very generous. I wasn't thinking that much. I was thinking 55-7.
No, mate. I looked at honestly. The judging gave me a 4. It deserved a 1. Like, it was that bad. I didn't put any points on the board. My attack was poor. Okay. We had holes for our defense. It was disastrous.
All right. Well, look, I thought you did some things right. I was giving you some credit for doing 2 pavlovas, learning a bit from your mistakes. That's where I gave you a try, essentially. Was that you learned there, and so obviously you did, and you improved. That's the key there. You improved. So I thought you did put at least some points on the board. Maybe a penalty goal. Maybe 55
penalty goal. I think we'll go 55-3 to make me feel better. But yes, 1-0. So all to play for me in the next 2 challenges that we have coming up. But shall we move on to the real rugby?
Yes.
Let's skip over that terrible performance put on by the New Zealander, and get on to the rugby from the weekend. So there was a total of 6 games, 2, I guess, headliner games, I would say, from the Summer Nation series, where you had England versus Wales at Twickenham and France versus Scotland in France. But to kick us off, Tonga played Canada on the Thursday night and won 28-3 to kind of... they're probably not the most dominating Tongan performance, but to... good preparation for a World Cup, beating a team that's not at the World Cup. Not their strongest team named, but all stepping stones. And they did have a red card in the 45th minute. So a learning curve for them.
Experience.
Exactly.
You know? Getting those game minutes under the belt for those players.
Totally. So I think George Moala, it was who former All Black, got the red card. So I didn't actually see the incident, but will be interesting to see if he misses any game time as well, like a red card we will talk about later on. Then Georgia made easy work of Romania, 56-6, I believe it was.
Yep, that's correct.
To really flex their... I reckon second-tier muscles that Georgia have, because Romania are at the World Cup. So a big win for them, and in a very interesting pool with you.
It's become really a very interesting pool over the last couple of weeks with some of these results, with Fiji performing well, with Wales rediscovering some form, and Georgia, we know, has been on the rise over the last couple of years as well. I feel bad for Portugal, who's the other team in that pool. But it's suddenly seeming like it's not going to be as easy of a walkthrough for the Wallabies as we thought, which, to be honest, is good. Like, if you can get some of those challenging games against not tier 1 teams, but it's still challenging for your team, I think that's really good for building this team up.
Totally, yeah. So an interesting pool there. Then we had the first headline game, which you could have easily put on the undercard because, it was a miserable game. So it was 19-17 in the end, England over Wales. The first half was about the worst half of footy I've seen in a very long time. Then there was a time where England were down to 12 men when they had 3 yellow cards, or 2 yellow cards at once, then got upgraded to a red, and still managed to find a way to win. So not good for Wales, but not a good game for both teams. Didn't give me a lot of belief for both teams going into, so much so that you may have seen on our Instagram page that I moved them both down the rankings to 9th and 10th in our international power rankings, below Fiji, who, as you said, are in your pool.
Yeah, below Fiji and Australia.
Yeah, Australia don't play and they move up. They'll be loving that. The second game of our headliners was a very good game, though. France versus Scotland.
Yeah.
2 teams. Scotland, man, I mean, underestimate them at your own peril, I think, is going to be the war cry for them. That's in France, which, as I've said before, is a very hard place to win. But teams are competing, and it was a very impressive I took more away from the Scottish performance than France. Like, what I saw from France was France can still get the job done. They haven't lost anything over the past year. Although they lost to Ireland in the Six Nations, they're still home for a home World Cup, looking really good. What I took from Scotland was if they can do this against France in France with pretty much France's top team, I think there was 1 or 2 pieces missing, I go, they can definitely beat South Africa or Ireland on the day. So, look, it's going to be an interesting World Cup, but a great game and great entertainment.
Listen to the pool that Scotland is in. It's South Africa, Ireland, Scotland, Tonga, and Romania. So, I mean, that is an explosive pool. I'd say that's...
You said say sorry for Portugal, but for Romania.
Sorry for Romania. I mean, I think that's the toughest pool in this competition. I mean, Pool A is probably the second pool with New Zealand, France, Italy, Uruguay, and Namibia, right? But you've got 3 tier 1 teams there in South Africa, Ireland, Scotland. You've got Tonga, who's knocking on the door of that, and you've got, I guess, your poor minnow Romania. But I mean, I'd love to see an upset from them. But South Africa, Ireland, Scotland, Tonga. Anytime those teams play, it's going to be must-watch footy. Anything could happen there. Like Scotland could take games from teams like South Africa and Ireland.
Totally. Yeah, it's going to be, that pool's going to be really interesting to see how games play out. That is the
pool of death. Pool B is officially the pool of death.
Yeah, that's the pool I wouldn't want to be in. 2 final games that ran us out were Portugal versus USA, which Portugal won 46-20, which is, again, good prep for a Minnow Nation beating a team that's not there. And then finally, Namibia beat Chile 28-26 as those two teams got prep.
Yep.
So, 6 good games of footy this week. Who have we got? Who's playing this weekend, actually? I know neither of our teams.
We have got this weekend on the 20th of August, Wales versus South Africa, Ireland versus England. That'll be a good one. Wales versus South Africa won't be bad either. Italy versus Romania and France versus Fiji. And then later in the week, we have actually Tuesday this week, we have got Tonga versus Canada. And we also have Uruguay versus the Argentina 15 and Georgia versus the USA.
And Samoa versus the Barbarians. Didn't know the opening game there, but cool.
Yeah.
So, Wales versus South Africa, Ireland versus England, and France versus Fiji will all be really interesting to see all those teams in action. France versus Fiji, I'm going to be watching probably pretty closely, the replay at least, because that will be interesting. My friend, last week we discussed the All Black squad. This week, your Wallabies have been named. I'm going to let you kick us off with your initial thoughts. We haven't discussed this yet. This is the first time you're going to hear both of our thoughts because we have not discussed this yet. But let us know your thoughts, my friend.
Yes. So obviously there's two glaring drops in this squad. That is the talk of the town. Their last names even rhyme. It's Hooper and Cooper, right? The drops of this team. Now, one of them is injury, one of them is form. Hoops has been left behind with his calf injury, so he's obviously not recovering from that. And I think a lot of people will be questioning, well, why don't you take him over in case he gets healthy? Look, I think with this squad, it's important. They need to be together. They need to be training together and not have someone there who's held back by injury. And he might not recover in time for any of the games. You know, calf injuries can take a while to heal from. They're nasty injuries, right? And it is very sad for Michael Hooper. I would love to see him there, but I don't. Eddie hasn't shut the door. I think he said he can still be called up. Like this, I think that's important to know is that this squad may not be final. I think you can still make adjustments, but I saw something where he's sort of left the door open for both Hooper and Cooper, because Cooper, he's dropped based on form. It seems there's no injury news from Cooper, but I will say, other than his 58-meter kick, there hasn't been the same Cooper that we even saw last year before his injury, right? It's just he hasn't been having the impact, and I think Eddie's said enough from Carter Gordon to say that he's an 80-minute player, and will give him the run of things. Cooper is probably the bigger shock, I would say, because he's not injured, for most people, and the fact that you're now putting it all on Carter Gordon, who was uncapped before this year. But you know, such is life in rugby, and it's very much a nod towards the youth movement that Eddie is ushering in preparation for the next World Cup, and we're seeing this elsewhere as well. You know, in the halfbacks. Or I guess it's not really that much of a youth movement, right? But you know, no Jake Gordon and no Lonergan taken either. But instead, bringing along Western Force player Isaac Fines Lele Iwasa. I think that's how I pronounce his name.
Yep,
Apologies
correct.
if I butchered that pronunciation. But he's also got versatility to play wing because he's got some speed on him, which I like. I do love a speedy halfback, and it's definitely a something out of left field. But I guess he just hasn't seen. He's not been impressed by Lonergan in the training that they've done. And then probably the addition that's got most tongues wagging is Max Jorgensen, who's recovered now from injury. I think he would have been part of this rugby championship squad if he hadn't been injured. And look, that's just that he can really be an X factor, man. Like we've seen even at such a young age how he's been playing in the Super Rugby level. Like this year already established himself as one of the Waratahs' best players. And he's got that chemistry as well with Nwangani Tawase and Parisi, if Parisi gets run in the centers too. So I think that's really that's a really big one for me. That's an inclusion. Other than that, elsewhere, not too many surprises, I think you'd have to say. the front row is as we expected, given the loss of Alatoa. The hookers are as we expected, really. I mean, I think there was a case for the other Lonergan to be in there, but I think I'm quite fine with the hookers that Eddie's taking along. Second row, again, no surprises there. It was always going to be Skilton, Arnold, and Frost, and whoever the fourth one was, can't really put anyone past Matt Phillip, really. No one else is really sticking their hands up. Lucy's, again, minus Michael Hooper due to injury, so that it sort of is what it is. And they're taking along Josh Kameni in that utility role. I think Ben Donaldson is the biggest question mark for a lot of people. And even for me, with bringing him along as that utility instead of Quaid, I guess I sort of question what Donaldson brings over Quaid Cooper. Like, yes, I know Donaldson has played some fullback this year, but you're also taking along Pataya and Kellaway and Jorgensen, all three of whom have also played fullback. So that's what I sort of question with bringing Donaldson along. I guess Eddie sees potential in Donaldson, and wants more of the youth movement within the team. I guess overall, one of my thoughts on this, my sort of overriding thought, is that yes, there's a lot of youth and inexperience on this team, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, given recent history and form with the Wallabies. And it's one of the things I brought up when Skelter was brought in the team. One of the quotes that he had, and I think it's important to highlight this because he's now the captain of the team, which is another huge shock. But what he said when he came into the team is that from his time playing in France, that every time he steps on a rugby field, he expects to win now, which is not something he necessarily experienced before in Australia. So I think by having a lot of these young guys in there, especially young guys that experience success at the Super Rugby level with winning games and making it to finals and things like that, I think that's a bit of a difference to other Wallabies who maybe have been around for a long time, who have it in their mind of just like, it's one of those things like, if you get beaten enough times, you come to expect it. Totally. I guess.
Forget how to win.
Exactly. So they, these kids, they don't. It's not ingrained to them the same mistakes of how the Wallabies lose games.
Totally.
So overall, it's exciting. I mean, that's the whole thing about Eddie's tenure so far, is it's been exciting. You can't say that it hasn't been exciting. And it's unexpected, but it's making me look forward to the World Cup and seeing how this team runs. Especially in their pool games, like that's going to be the real chance to see them grow. I think the friendly game against France on the 28th of August as well will be really a good window into what we can expect from this team too. It's just it's a very young team. It's a very, very young team, which I don't think it's a bad thing. I actually don't think it's a bad thing. France pulled a similar thing in 2018, 2019, around then. We could see what they're doing now. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing.
I'm gonna give my impressions now, which I don't think we're too far apart. Exactly what you said with a lot of the things. I think there's a lot of good. I don't think it's the worst thing. Like, you look back at 2019 Rugby World Cup, and I think there was 7 surviving Wallabies from that World Cup. So there's 26 guys who haven't played at a World Cup. I go, that last World Cup, 2019 World Cup, you got beaten well in the quarters by England. Were we ever expecting you to win? No. So why should a whole big contingent be coming into this World Cup? The issues I kind of have, one of them is some of these players, aka the one you highlighted, Ben Donaldson, why didn't we see him in the Rugby Championship?
Yeah.
Now I understand it, and you can make an easy argument. You go, Eddie was looking at Quaid and going, this is your shot to put your number on the jersey and get yourself over. He didn't do it. So he said, bugger it, I'd rather take Ben Donaldson, and if I need to play him. If not, I don't. Yeah. He's going to obviously play at some point at the first 5. Carter Gordon is not going to start every single game at first 5. Yeah. I think you'd be silly to do it that way. I think Carter Gordon's going to start every meaningful game, so I think it means that every game bar Romania, he's going to start, or Portugal, was it Portugal in your pool? Portugal. Every game bar Portugal, he'll probably be starting, because I think Georgia, Fiji,
Wales.
Wales, all well and truly, tough teams to beat. So I think they play those teams at least. Carter Gordon will start. I love Will Skelton being captain. I think by far and away the best player for the Wallabies for the Rugby Championship. And like you said, just his experience in France, a lot of very smart things from that. I don't mind we talked about it, I think, last week when we said what position Bolt is, and I said Kurbalo maybe is at third scrum half because we knew there was an option. I know he's got Donaldson listed as utility, but I definitely think he's the second first five there. I just go, is there no one better than him as another first five? And I think that's an issue. You look back and you go, we used to always talk about your locks. Now we're literally just looking at first five and going, you can't tell me and Noel Olosio isn't better than Ben Donaldson. Like, as much as I know Eddie's moved away from it, or a Jack Debrasini, I don't know. Yeah, that's the question mark that raise out instantly.
Well, Donaldson has played some games for the Wallabies before, whereas Debrasini hasn't. And just with Noah, I think Eddie Noah's had all Super Rugby season to put his hand up to be selected, and he hasn't done that. When Eddie challenged him, we saw one.
Donaldson has?
I think towards the end of the season, he definitely stepped up. He improved towards the back end of the season. And I think his flexibility to be able to play fullback as well has put him over the line there. Like, I think they would be, because Noah even sort of lost his primacy of position to Debrasini, right? I think he sort of slipped away in importance in the Brumbies' plans. Like, even in their semi-final match, he slipped away. He wasn't their primary 10.
So then, then, if you're ranking first fives in Australia, how are you ranking them? So Carter Gordon obviously won.
And then, I mean, it is probably Donaldson second at the moment. Like, I look around, I think Debrasini would be close behind. I think just the fact that he hasn't played in a Wallabies jersey yet and the fact that Donaldson can also play fullback is what has given Donaldson the edge for Eddie Jones. I think skill-wise, I think Debrasini can be better.
Yeah.
I think if this was next year, I think Debrasini would probably get the nod. If Eddie had more games to test out Debrasini, I'd say maybe Debrasini gets a look there. But I think.
So you think Donaldson is, and that's I guess my issue with the Wallabies right now is if Donaldson's your second best first five. Again, this isn't me going at Donaldson. I just don't think Donaldson's world class yet. Like, no. When you look at it, I go, Carter Gordon's getting to the point of world class. You look at all the good teams in the world right now: Ireland, Johnny Sexton, France, Roman Intimuck, South Africa, who have an issue of themselves with Andre Pollard out. So they've got, Manny Lebok. Is he going to take them there? New Zealand have 3 world-class first fives. It's just, to me, Scotland, even 5th team in the world, Finn Russell. So I go, if Carter Gordon was to go down, I think that's your tournament done, And that's, again, similar to what Aaron Smith is for us.
Yeah, and it's like that's the hand we've been dealt. What can Eddie do from there? He clearly doesn't have that confidence in Quade Cooper. I mean, Quade has made a number of mistakes in these rugby championship games that have been costly.
Totally.
And that's not to say that Carter Gordon hasn't made mistakes. He definitely has while he's being blooded, but he's improved every game that he's had significant minutes in, and his ceiling is higher than what Quade's currently is. Because due to age and past injuries.
I'm just going to take you through some stats because I thought, we've discussed it pretty heavily, the inexperience of this Wallabies team. Now, obviously 33 players in the squad. Out of the 33 players, they have 645 caps between them, which gives them 20 caps on average each, compared to the All Blacks who have 1370 caps between them, which is an average of about 40 each. So obviously, very inexperienced. But to me, that's not an issue. Like, we've talked about it. that can be a really good thing. You're a bit more naive. You're a bit more willing to do whatever it takes. You're a bit more everything. You're younger. You're blooded. There's a World Cup at home. It all makes sense. The issue that stands out for me, and I thought about this, is a topic we've talked about, which is winning. Now, winning in the green and gold jersey. Now, I put up a stat on Instagram, and it's 39% of the squad, so 13 players out of the 33, have not won in a green and gold jersey. Now, there's 3 debutants, obviously, haven't had a chance. Out of the squad as well, 58% haven't won more than 5 games in the green and gold jersey. Now, Hughesy, I just have a question for you. How many games does it take to win a Rugby World Cup? 4 pool games, yeah?
Yep.
A quarterfinal.
Yeah, so 7.
So 7. There is 64% of the squad have not won more than 7 games in a green and gold jersey. So that means basically 2/3 of the squad haven't done that. So 1/3 of the squad understands how to win 7 games in a green and gold jersey. Now, again, it doesn't mean the world, obviously. It's just another point where I'm like, man, this is going to, if you win, it's a story for the ages. This will be one of the most inexperienced tier 1 nations.
I mean, even to get to a semi-final or a final would be a hell of a story.
Oh, 100%. And that's more and more saying now. And I just wanted to, because I was like, is this just the Wallabies? And I was like, I'll compare it to the All Blacks. The All Blacks, obviously, all of them have won a game. No debutants, they've all won a game. 15% of the squad have won, so this is 5 players, less than 5 games, and 18%, 6 players, have won less than 7. So 18% of the squad. So that means, 82% of the squad have won enough games to know exactly what winning 7 games and winning a Rugby World Cup would do. Again, not saying that it's such a negative thing. It is. It would help if you've won in the green and gold jersey and understanding what winning is. It doesn't mean the world. Like you've said, your pool is an easy enough pool. You could end up in a quarterfinal with in England, Argentina, Japan, whatever, and easily end up making a semi-final, which would be so valuable for these players going into the next World Cup. But to me, to kind of wrap up why I did these stats, I think Eddie Jones has made his selections for the 2027 World Cup, not for the 2023, which the only thing that disappoints me is what Eddie Jones has come in and said this whole time since he's been there is we're going to win this World Cup. We're going to the World Cup to win it. And I just don't think the squad has been fully selected to do that. Now, he's had his hand tied behind his back with injuries. I totally get that. And performances. But in my eyes, he has selected a squad to win a 2025 British and Irish Lions series and set themselves up for success in 2027, which is definitely not a bad thing. Yeah. Just an interesting point.
I guess so. I mean, for me, when I look at this squad and I think what changes could be made to win this World Cup, where would I make a change to win this World Cup? Right? That's not challenged by injury, right? Because obviously you'd put Alan Alatoa in there if he wasn't injured. For me, maybe Michael Hooper. Michael Hooper is, I mean, but again, that's injury again. That is, he'd be the first person. If he was healthy, I would select Michael Hooper.
But I also think this is me looking at the squad and looking at the numbers. Tom Hooper came in at the Rugby Championship. Was a starting-ish 6 or definitely in that loose forward trio of the Brumbies. Didn't have a great game against South Africa. Played for 30 minutes, got pulled. I know he had a shoulder injury and everything. He improved his next game, which I think was against the All Blacks in Melbourne, and then definitely had his best game but in Dunedin. But I go 3 games and all of a sudden we're Wallabies fans are hyping this guy up like he's something special. And I'm like, you had Pete Samu, who led one of the greater comebacks in Melbourne last year at Marvel Stadium. They're playing good footy, and he's decided to go, and I get it, going for youth and going for a guy who I think fits his style better. But like a guy like Pete Samu, I sit there and I go, how is he not in that group? Jed Holloway, we had said he can play rugby, he's a good rugby player. Jake Gordon, a great rugby player, and he's gone away from those guys. And again, for a bit of inexperience or a bit of youth for different?
So for me, I think you could fit Holloway in over Kameni. I don't the Kameni's selection. I mean, he played decently when he had his limited minutes in a game. With the Jake Gordon one, look, we've said time and time again, he is a rugby player, but when he pulls on a green and gold jersey, he seems to always get yellow carded or seems to do something wrong, get himself in the wrong position, right? So Fides Lele Iwasa, he's not that young. I think I'm pretty sure he's 27.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he's not exactly, a fresh kid, right?
Yep.
He has got some experience, right? He's just, he's just hasn't played for the Wallabies. He hasn't been called up to Wallabies level yet, which, that's what happened with Richie Arnold. This is Richie Arnold's first crack at the Wallabies, right? So, and even Skelton being called back in from playing in France and things like that. So I wouldn't necessarily put him up as one that's necessarily playing, a pick that's aimed towards the British and Irish Lions or maybe the British and Irish Lions, but definitely not towards the next World Cup. I guess for me, the Pete Samu one, I don't know what the story is there, but it just seems like he's just not in Eddie's plans. He's just not, he doesn't fit the way that Eddie's playing or wants to play. I guess for me, if I was really trying to, I guess the big question about is he trying to win for this World Cup or for the next World Cup is where you have to look at the first is in the first five, right? Is Donaldson over Cooper? Do I think that Quade Cooper would give the Wallabies a better chance to win this World Cup compared to Ben Donaldson? Yes. I think that is where you can really see his hand being played, where the fact that he's gone, look, we don't need Cooper in the squad. We're confident enough in Donaldson. I think that's more to give Donaldson experience than it is saying that he thinks Donaldson's better than Cooper.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but even in that, Donaldson is going to get experience in these pool games to be able to play better. I think that his season at the Waratahs was quietish. I think it was probably a little bit underrated, as you even pointed out to me during one of our live broadcasts. And then towards the end of the season, he definitely seemed to take off a bit, particularly when he had Parisi and Jorgensen. Once those two sort of went down, it was put on him a bit, and he was a little bit limited in what he could do, but he still played well. And with Fekete injured as well, like those are three big weapons that were neutralized for Donaldson. So I think today Cooper represents a better chance than Donaldson. By the end of the pool stages, maybe not. We'll see how Ben Donaldson plays. He could surprise us all. But yeah, that's the biggest one where I see evidence of playing for 2027 as opposed to playing for 2023. The other picks, though, I hear what you're saying about Pete Samu, but I don't know if that's necessarily playing for the next World Cup as it is playing for how Eddie wants to play. But I don't know. I can't read his mind, unfortunately. That's
no
the biggest
one
one. Yeah, exactly. That's the biggest one that I see. It's really the Donaldson one that is the one that is of any of the picks. That's the main one that is playing for the next World Cup. The others, though, I think it'd be hard to argue their position in the squad.
Yeah, I think I could make some valuable arguments there. I think you could. That's the question to me. Like, I look again, I've got the luxury of being an All Blacks supporter where every single squad we're selecting for a World Cup is the squad. So I can sit there and go, look, we're not selecting a player for the next World Cup, we're selecting them because they're the best players in the country at the moment. I think you could make enough arguments against some of the players there that you could find a like-for-like replacement or slightly better. Like, let's say Zane Nongor, again, hasn't had a fantastic start to his international career, but I think he's like 21, 22.
Very young.
And I think you could find a like-for-like, if not slightly better, from an older person or even a Tom Lambert or something like that we've discussed before. Again, I think injuries have forced this more upon Eddie, and I would have loved to know, hey, Hooper fully fit, Quade fully fit, hadn't done his Achilles last year, what his mindset would be. I think there is, it'll be really interesting. If it all falls to shit, say you get knocked out in the group stages, he's at least got a moderate argument to make. If it goes really well when you go through all the way to the final, well, fuck, he's made all the right selections and I'll shut my mouth. And so many other people will, like Sonny Bill, who seems to think that he knows exactly what's going through Eddie's head and exactly how rugby works.
Well, Sonny Bill's also talking about loyalty, so I think we can just sort of safely take pretty much everything coming out of his mouth. Interesting point when you brought up Tom Lambert. Him and Zane Nongo are the same age.
Which is, I knew that was the case, and I don't think... But I think you could find a prop in Australia who is better than Zane Nongo. Is what I'm saying.
Who would you pick though? Like, who is this prop that's better than him?
Well, I'm not going to lie. I don't know who the 6-string prop should be of Australian rugby.
Yeah, exactly. But
I'm sure I could find someone.
Yeah, I don't know if there is though. I don't know that there is. I don't know. And that's just how Australian rugby is at the moment. And I think people are looking at a squad and saying, oh, it's so inexperienced. It's like, okay, but where else are the players coming from? Right? Where are we going to get these players?
All right. What I'm going to do, I'm going to find an alternative squad and I'm making an alternative squad for the Wallabies.
Yeah.
None injury based, like they can't be injured if they're just not selected. And we'll see, and I'll put it up into a poll and see if it's any of them deserve to be based off the second string. I'll make a second string Wallaby squad from this 33 and see who the people select.
Well, I'd be interested in that because, again, similar to you, and I'm even an Australian rugby fan, even I don't know where some of these, or they slip to the back of my mind. You know, they're not, but the fact that it's because they're not the names that leap out from the page to you.
Totally.
But those players are just as important as the ones whose names do.
Shall we move on to...
Yeah, it's good. I guess the last thing I'll say on this is just... I think I would be lying if I said I wasn't concerned about the first 5 position, right? But I guess it's for me, I have been disappointed in Quade. I think he's played himself out of that jersey, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the case as well. That when I sat there and was like, why wouldn't you play Ben Donaldson more? All I can say is he was legitimately wanting to give Quade the best opportunity to crack the jersey, and he just didn't do enough. Let's move on, though. A man who may not be playing much of the World Cup, Owen Farrell, another red card for a shoulder to the head incident.
Yeah.
It was a shoulder charge in the end, and it connected to the head in the England-Wales game. Was originally yellow card with the bunker or whatever they're calling it, reviewing it, and it getting upgraded to the red card, which it was a red card in all facets. But this is about his second or third one at least. He's already had one that got downgraded for the way he responded to it and doing the tackling skill that he got 3 weeks all up for. So people were starting to speak about 6 weeks, which I think would only see him back for the last pool game or the quarterfinal potentially.
Yeah, look, if he misses 3, then he's missing the first pool game, which is arguably their most important, England versus Argentina.
Yep.
And if he misses 6, I think he misses all pool games as well. So, that's a very interesting one to watch.
He will miss all pool games, which his original ban for that last one was 6. It got put down to 2 for like the good behaviour and doing everything, and then got put down 1 more for doing the tackling school. So my assumption will be this will be 6. He won't get any downgrade of the 2, but if he goes to tackling school, he may get it down to 5, which will see him play the last game against Samoa, which is still not what you want to be going into a World Cup with preparation like that.
Yeah. Look, is what it is. I did hear something interesting about this game, though. I saw in one of the myriad of rugby threads that I had on my social media that Owen Farrell got particularly fired up during this game thanks to a sledge from Dan Biggar from Wales. This is one of my favourite sledges of all time. So apparently Dan Biggar said to Owen Farrell while they were, there was an altercation going on, your mum's shagging the Ireland head coach. Which, of course, is very funny because Owen Farrell's dad is, in fact, the head coach of the Ireland rugby team. And apparently that really set Owen Farrell off. And I just thought that if that's true, that's fucking brilliant.
That is golden.
Fucking brilliant. And it's just like, what do you say to that? Like, it's true.
Yeah, that is a gotcha moment.
Yeah, that is an incredible sledge. Incredible sledge.
Good. More like that from you, Dan Bigger. We love that. Another team that's had a lot of chat about recently, as you said, actually mentioned earlier in the podcast, Hooper and Cooper. Eddie's floated the idea that they might be back. It's because squads have been named, but they're not formalised until like August 28th or something like that, like when all the warm-up games are done. Because injuries can happen during warm-up games, they're pretty free-flowing with movements. But the South African coach did something very similar, 9-bar, to Eddie Jones by saying Andre Pollard and Lucano Arm are both, in and abouts, could be used at the World Cup still. Now, there's been a conspiracy that one of the South African scrum halves, because they've selected 4, is going to go down injured in one of the first pool games, and then, alas, here comes Andre Pollard to save the day and lead South Africa to another World Cup. Now, I don't think it's that deep where South Africa are only going to care that much. B, I don't like that this is even a thing. Like, I would rather all the teams, September 1st have to name their squad, and all the teams name their squad, and maybe even if you do it like, one all in one day and then next all in the next day, and you do 10 every on the hour for 10 hours or something like that, some cool way of doing it.
Pull per day or 2
pull per day. Yeah, exactly. Pull per day is even better. That would be really cool, because I just want to know the final squads. I hate the idea that they could change now. I get injuries in and out totally. Like, I've got no problem with it. I'll believe them all. But don't name a squad with the idea that, Andre Pollard's actually going to come back and play for us. Like, I'm sure they haven't done it, Jark's 9-bar, but I just don't like the idea of it. I like the idea of, hey, this is our squads. The NRL, like we've always talked about, do this really well. Teamless Tuesdays, you name your teams. It may change, but at least you know who's named. It's the same with even State of O, they do the same thing. And yeah, you might have who's coming off the bench and who's starting, changes in the NRL, but at least the squads and teams are named. So I just would wish we'd do it that way.
Fair enough.
Alrighty. Last point for the day. As we're getting closer to the World Cup, I believe it's like 27 days away now, which is...
It's less than that, actually. I've got the ticker up here. It is 25 days, 10 hours, 57 minutes, and 20 seconds now.
So, 25-ish, plus minus 1 day away. We thought, let's have a look at the player we are most looking forward to seeing play at this Rugby World Cup. Now... it can be from your team, it can be from any team, but a player we are interested in seeing at this World Cup. Hughesy, would you like to start, or would you like me to start?
I'll start. I'm kind of split. I've got 2. I don't think it's going to be any surprise. But Carter Gordon and Max Jorgensen are my 2. I can't pick them apart. I give a slight edge to Jorgensen just because he's Waratah, but they are representative of the next wave of Wallabies, and potentially Wallaby greats. And I'm really excited to see what they can do at the highest level of competition in World Rugby.
Yeah, look, I kind of set this question up because I knew you'd say Jorgensen. Which, you know what? Fair enough. They have been playing out of their skin, and we didn't talk much about him. I didn't mention his name at all, but I think Jorgensen actually is one of the actual selections that I do like, because that last wing outside back spot was kind of no man's land. Like, I was like, do you select Tom Wright? Do you not? But
one change I definitely make is Wright in over Vunivalu. I still don't see the Vunivalu thing.
Which is actually funny, because I need to. I've got it. We, sometime at the start of this year or the end of last year, named our Wallabies backline if it was the end of the World Cup final and the day beforehand, and I named Vunivalu in the team. And you know what's actually funny? I think if I remember correctly, the only position we're really wrong in is 10. Because I think we both went like Nick White, then I think like we both went Noah Lolosio or Quay Cooper. Then we would have had Karevi, Probably Ikitau, which he would have been in there. And then I think you went Mark and Korobeti. I don't know who we went at fullback, but probably Callaway. And I think I went Korobeti and Vunivalu with Callaway at the back. So we were pretty damn close, to be honest. My player that I am most looking forward to, I'm so high on this team, it's becoming ridiculous. But it is Fiji, and it is Waisea Naikalivu, who is their captain, 13. He scored a great try against Japan, but this team's full of superstars, and you have all of these outside backs, all of these wingers, these superstar athletes, and this guy's the captain in the number 13 jersey and is one of those but goes under the radar. And I think Fiji are going to smash this tournament, and he will be earning a big payday after this tournament. So watch out for Naikalavu. I'm hoping I'm saying his name right. I'm probably butchering it, as I do with all names, but watch out for him. But still 2 weeks until we see either of our teams back in action, I believe. No, I lie. Yep. Wait, when are you back in action?
28th of August.
Yes, I'm 26th, you're 28th. Which, is that our last? It is both of our last games. That's the only warm-up games we have
You're
left.
the 26th at 4:30 a.m. against South Africa. I am Monday the 28th at 1:45 a.m. against France.
Excellent. Wow. 2 weeks away from those. That'll be exciting. We'll be really close. That'll be like, 13-ish days out from 12-ish, 11 days out from a Rugby World Cup. Stay tuned for our second challenge on the Sports Booth Bledisloe coming out. We will be doing something very soon. And if it goes to a decider, so what we're going to do, I've decided, Hughesy, this will obviously happen annually, but it'll be 2/3 challenges. If you win the second one, then obviously we don't need to do a third. If I win the second one, then we do need to do a third for the decider. And I will be getting a trophy made up for this. So,
Nice.
Be prepared to come with your A game for our next challenge. Other than that,
Absolutely.
thank you for joining us on today, discussing pretty much the Wallaby squad, because there's so much to discuss and break down. Yeah. Today we really tried to get inside Eddie's brain, didn't we? We did a deep dive. You came from the left ear, I came from the right ear, and we just got in there.
Yeah, dangerous game to be playing, but
it is.
We gave it our best shot.
We did. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again next week, same time, same place. We'll see you later. Goodbye.
Peace.